So one time, when I had to work closely with someone whose personality was very different than mine, was when I helped my friend move. She was moving in with her sister and her boyfriend, and the four of us together were going to go empty out a storage unit. I didn't know all the extra people would be there, um, but I got to meet everyone. They all seemed very nice, and we get in, and there's a couple hiccups here and there, but we managed to make everything work. We get into the storage unit, and they open it up, and nothing's boxed up for the most part. It's large things, and they start. It's their stuff, so I want to let them do their thing, and they start going, well, we're gonna move these kinds of things first, and then we're gonna move some other stuff. And they didn't really have a plan. They were just like, somebody was gonna start putting things into a box, and I say, hey, this is what we can do. And I just start loading things onto the cart that I had. And I said, I'm gonna take this out here. Is the van open? Let's go ahead and get the van back open. And I realized very quickly that they were gonna get stuck on the little things. It was their things. They wanted to take good care of it. I wanted to get it all in the van, get it moved. That was the goal. I wasn't going to try to break anything, right? They realized that. But it was one of those like, hey, y'all are getting stuck on the wrong thing here. Let's focus on the goal, which I'm a very goal oriented person. I don't really care about the steps it takes to get there. We're going to get there. And that was just like a quick little, okay, y'all have all very different personality types, but you're getting stuck on these things. That's why y'all get along. Luckily, I'm here and we're going to do things a little differently. And we were in and out like 20 minutes, loaded up almost everything they owned into a van and a couple cars. So that was great. Uh, the moving went fine. We had a good little assembly line worked out fairly quickly, and then it was easy. Describe a time when it was especially important to make a good impression on a client. So I've never really been in a situation where I had a client that I had to impress, um, like to make a really good impression. I've been in sales environments where I had to make a good impression, but it wasn't especially important. It was part of the job, you know. It wasn't an especially important client, if that makes sense. I have recently, I was interviewed for the position I'm currently in, which isn't the most luxurious of positions. It's not the nicest of jobs, but I did have to get interviewed by someone that I didn't know, on the spot, didn't know I was being interviewed, and so I had to use some skills that I had to try to impress this person and impress upon them also that I was good at this. Even though I didn't look it in the moment, I didn't look like I do this job, that I could do other jobs. I had to make sure that they, knew that um, I could do the basic skill set of what we were trying to do, but also that I was fun to be around. So I was making jokes. I was keeping it light while also moving us through the interview process in a way that made me look pretty good. That was my goal. But also, I exhibited some flaws just to make sure they knew I was a real person. And that went well. I got the job. So, you love to see that. Describe a time when your team or company was undergoing some change. How did that impact you and how did you adapt? Uh, at a restaurant I used to work at, that I was a high ranking manager, the owners decided we would get a food truck. And they bought the food truck, they got it all decked out. Cool. They got people to run it. Cool. But we know that our in store people are going to have to do something. And the plans kind of devolved at that point. They did all the basic stuff, the rather important things, and but we knew we were going to have to cook for them and have things ready at certain times and have cold food ready that they could cook. And we knew that there was going to be some logistics that they weren't taking account of. We knew it couldn't mess with our inventory, so that was its own issue that we had to create a little system for. And then we let them have that system so that they could keep track of their inventory, what they would need, what they had to order, even though they would still be using our spaces in between. It was touch and go for a little bit, trying to figure out what time things needed to go out, what times people said things needed to go out, when people were going to show up, what they were going to take. Lots of miscommunications, but we got it done. And generally, all of our customers at our main location and wherever the truck was were happy. Great reviews. Food was always good. Drinks were always good. But behind the scenes, that's where there's always a little bit of a grind and a couple issues, and we did have some of those, but we got there. Tell me about a time an unexpected problem derailed your planning. How did you recover? So when we opened up a cell phone repair business some years ago in Hoover, we got together some local women that we knew to help us do some advertising. And this was like we were a franchise, so this was part of their model. But we used people that we knew that we used at other businesses. They were friends of ours, but all like young college students. And so 8 of us would go out to various areas in Hoover, passing out little flyers saying, "Hey, we're open. This is a $10 off card. If you break something on your phone, come check us out. Laptops, whatever." And we go through several parking lots. We talk to lots of people throughout the Hoover area, and then we get to the Galleria parking deck, and we put just a ton of these little flyers on people's cars, not in a way that they would get like they'd cause damage or anything, but they were there. We get a phone call at the office. Well, rather, the office gets a phone call saying, "Hey, there's a ton of these cards. What are y'all gonna do about it?" We're somewhere else already. Um, we have moved into multiple groups so we can cover more area. It was also 1,000 degrees because it was summertime in Alabama. And our home office goes, "Well, what we're going to do is, we make some phone calls, we figure some things out. They go and get every single card off the cars. Then they deliver it to us so we can go put them in other places. We were also going to doctors' offices now and lawyers' offices, just anywhere we could go and not solicit too much, but just enough to talk to someone, say, "Hey, we're in the area now. If you need something, just let us know." We did, everything went fine. The parking garage people weren't mad at us, they just weren't happy. We didn't lose any of our flyers, marketing continued, and so everything went really well. Give an example of a time you had to have a difficult conversation with a frustrated colleague or client. How'd you handle the situation? I had a coworker at a restaurant. I was a manager there. She was an employee, and she got really upset. The situation at the restaurant, we were busy. She was very busy, and she was just getting heated and heated and heated. And then the one of the other coworkers was kind of just jabbing her and just constantly with the little jokes and just making. I mean, it was inappropriate for the most part. And so, we talked to him. We're like, "Hey, you can't do that." Blah blah blah. And he wasn't saying anything like terrible, but it was still like, come on, like that's not professional at the very least. And it's getting to her, and I was like, "Hey, like how about you take a little break? We didn't really do breaks very often. How about you take a little break, maybe go outside, smoke a cigarette, chill, okay?" I needed her to stay on the clock for like 2 more hours and help us close. We closed early that day, and I just needed her to help. I needed more hands so we could all get out of there on time. I wasn't gonna fire her. I was definitely gonna write up the other guy, and I told her that. But I was like, "Hey, just calm down." And I went to talk to her. I told her I was gonna write up the other guy for what he's been doing, and honestly, he was getting pushed out anyway because of his behavior. And I was like, "Hey, we want to keep you around. We want to move you to management." And we talked, and she cools off. Sometimes you just got to vent a little bit. And everything worked well. She came back to 20 minutes later, and we finished the rest of the dinner rush, late lunch rush, and closed up the store. An example of time I was able to be creative with my work. What was exciting or difficult about it? Um, Working in tech, I got to do a lot of creative things because sometimes the solutions aren't what you have, or aren't what it looks like. Sometimes it's very easy. Let me just reinstall Windows. Sure. Sometimes the problem is it requires going into the tech and actually, removing a board or removing chips and replacing them, micro soldering. And I had all the equipment, the basic equipment to do micro soldering. I had the heat gun, had the flux, I have the magnifying lens, I have all the basics, tweezers, all that. I don't have any of the other setup. No camera, no zoom in, magnifying lens, sure, but these are very small parts. And so we using like a beaker here that had pens in it, and like a couple clamps and just wiring just tied up over here to hold a light up at just the right angle and another light to light from below so we could see everything we were doing. We just managed to solder parts back on or remove and like solder on a new charging port or a new some new RAM onto the board. Just things that they're not incredibly difficult, but when you don't have all the pieces and all the setup, it is much more difficult. But it was fun to do it, and whenever we were done and it worked, and we cleaned up, we put everything back together, everything was working fine, it was always a great feeling for everybody involved.